Lee Wax, it's wonderful to welcome you. You're representing Jewish Women's Aid on this Shabbat, Jewish Women's Aid Shabbat, which is coming up. The question which shouts out for this Shabbat, Jewish Women's Aid Shabbat, in relation to Parshat Vayeitzei, is how is domestic abuse and sexual violence in some way or other represented in this week's Parsha? And what does the Parsha have to teach us about these two very important and crucial aspects of our societal life right now? Lee, lovely to welcome you.
Thank you. It's really great to be here. It's a great parsha for this because you have several women who are actually appearing in them. There's not always stuff about women in the parshiot, and actually there is in this week's parsha. The story, just for anyone who's watching who's not completely familiar with it, the Parshat is Vayeitzei, and the story is essentially about Jacob, who's escaping from his home, goes to stay elsewhere, and amongst other bits of the story is where he works for 7 years to marry the girl he's fallen in love with, Rachel, and the father tricks him, Laban tricks him at that moment of marriage and gives him the older daughter, Leah, and then he has to work another 7 years for the hands of Rachel. Why is that crucial? Why is that important to this topic that we're talking about violence against women? Because essentially you see these women who are really important characters, who are the matriarchs, two of the important matriarchs of Judaism, and yet they're minor characters. They appear in the text as minor characters, and we don't actually know a huge amount about them. There's a lot we could say about that, about what we do with these characters who are the female characters, and how we try to learn a little bit more about them and how to make them into fuller characters. But essentially, what's important is that they're spoken about is in ways how they belong to men. They belong to Laban, their father, and then they worked for and then almost bought by these 14 years of labor by Jacob, who becomes their husband.
The equivalence is like the Hollywood movie of yesteryear, when women were only present in the movie as one step removed from the man that kind of captured them or owned them or fell in love with them. And
never mind.
Rachel and Leah have that aspect too.
They do, and never mind yesteryear. We even see it now. I mean,
certainly. So there are some movies out there which have redeemed that part, but certainly it still exists.
Yeah. Bit characters, or maybe the one female character. So we it's really important to look at it and to look at how this plays out in the Torah.
Wonderful. And the journey of these two characters then is also very much in relationship to their child rearing abilities. Jacob is also known as Israel, and the Bnei Israel are the 12 children that are born from Rachel and Leah.
Not mentioning the 13th, by the way.
Go on.
Woman, Dinah.
The 13th, Dinah, who appears in the 13th,
who doesn't get a tribe. She doesn't get a tribe.
Doesn't get a tribe, doesn't come in the 12.
Yeah.
That's also an aspect both distinct from this generation and also overlapping in ways in this generation. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think, we talk about agency, don't we, when we talk about these kind of issues, about the agency of women. And what's lovely, by the way, about this parsha is you get a few moments where these two women, Leah and Rachel, actually have agency. It's very tiny. We often overlook it, but they're two great moments. One is where Jacob has a vision, and it's this wonderful vision, not the first vision, he has two visions actually. One with the ladder, that's at the beginning, but later on, where God speaks to him and says, it's time for you to go, get up and go. And he then, instead of just doing it, he has a conversation with his two wives in the morning. And he says to Rachel, listen, God said to me, we've got to get out of here. This is not a place for us to stay. You need to get out of here, but I need to kind of trick your father-in-law into giving us wealth to go with. And he speaks to them as equals. And they answer, the two of them, as equals, and they agree together, the three of them. They actually say, our father's given us no inheritance whatsoever. We're with you. Let's go. So this really lovely moment. It's quick and we don't need to focus on it, but it's quick, but it's there. And the other moment is a bit later on, a few verses later, when they're about to leave. It's kind of an act of rebellion on Rachel's behalf. She steals the statue, the idols, from her father's house. She's very fond of them. That's another conversation, but she steals them, she hides them, and it's like a trickery on her behalf. And she tricks Laban into not knowing. So there's this kind of act of rebellion at the end against the father who has treated them as chattel. And I really love that. I love it.
So I guess in the overarching sense, one of the things that you bring my mind to, and we spoke about just as we were preparing for this video, is that in an overarching context, these stories are imperfect. They're stories of imperfect avot and imaot, imperfect forefathers and foremothers, who give us the opportunity to really think in very conscientious ways about the kind of relationships that we want and the kind of relationship society that we want to build. And there is no exception here in relationship with the story of Rachel and Leah. We have the opportunity to really think about, like, how do we want, how we as women, how we as men want to treat one another in a more equal, more loving, more caring, more egalitarian society. To move us on then to really the meat of this Shabbat that we're marking together, Jewish Women's Aid Shabbat. One of the big pieces that Jewish Women's Aid is speaking about during this week is domestic abuse and sexual violence inside our community and beyond. The question I have for you is, what is the work the Jewish Women's Aid is trying to do? And how can all of the people watching this video and beyond support your work during this week and beyond, and going forward?
That's a good question. Thank you. So what's our work? Our work is essentially at Jewish Women's Aid. We're supporting the 1 in 4 Jewish women who, across their lifetimes over the age of 16, will experience a serious abusive relationship, and the 1 in 5 Jewish women who will experience some form of sexual violence from the age of 16 and over, and that's a huge amount of women, and we don't talk about it enough as a community, and so we do a few different things at Jewish Women's Aid, but one of them is direct support, one of them is awareness raising, another is education, prevention work, and we do that in schools and universities and in youth groups, about helping people build healthy relationships, equal relationships, rather than unequal ones, where abuse of women is possible and happens. So that's what we do, and once a year we have this cross-communal JWA Shabbat where we encourage the entire community to look at the structures within our community that allow abuse of women to continue.
I really appreciate this moment of partnership and connection and learning together in your role at Jewish Women's Aid. And I've enjoyed studying with you. Really wonderful to just as a community to be focusing on these topics and focusing our support for the wonderful organization that you represent today. I wish you and your community and Jewish Women's Aid a Shabbat Shalom and a very, very successful work in the coming week and beyond. Rabbi Lee Wax, the final word is with you.
Thank you. I mean, thank you for inviting me. It's been lovely to talk to you briefly. And I just want to say we need allies like you, Oliver. We need allies, both female allies, but we need male allies as well, because it's really important to us that the men have a place in fighting violence against women. Thank you for talking about it. Every single time a male rabbi or female rabbi talks about it, a woman in the community knows that there's somewhere she can go for help and then speaks to the rabbi afterwards every single time. So it's massively important that our rabbis are talking about it. So we're grateful. And male allies to help prevent it by educating our boys to avoid male entitlement, as we see in the parasha, and also the whole area of toxic masculinity, which we need to work on. We need men to be allies in this. So thank you for being an ally. We're really grateful.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Thank